"Ma'am, this section is reserved for paying guests." The words landed softly, almost politely, yet somehow they cut through the elegant restaurant more sharply than any raised voice ever could. For a moment, the piano player continued his slow jazz melody. Crystal glasses still shimmered beneath the amber lights. Waiters continued weaving between tables carrying plates that cost more than some families spent on groceries in a week. But something shifted. Conversation slowed. Heads turned. Eyes lingered. And suddenly, a woman sitting alone at table 12 became the most visible person in the room. Emily Carter felt every stare before she lifted her eyes from the menu. She looked up at the hostess standing beside her table. The young woman wore an apologetic smile, the kind people use when they know they are delivering humiliation wrapped in courtesy. Emily blinked once, then twice. "I'm sorry," she asked quietly. The hostess glanced toward the manager near the front entrance before returning her gaze. "This section is generally reserved for our premium guests." Emily lowered her eyes to the receipt resting beside her water glass. The reservation confirmation sat right there. Paid in full 3 weeks ago. She had saved for months to be here. Every dollar, every extra shift, every sacrificed luxury. The reservation was legitimate. The seat belonged to her. Yet somehow she was being made to feel as though she had wandered into a place where she did not belong. Around her, whispers began moving through the room like a slow breeze. Not loud enough to hear clearly, just loud enough to feel. Emily swallowed. She had experienced moments like this before. Different places, different faces. Same feeling. The feeling of being judged before speaking a single word. The feeling of becoming a story in someone else's head before they knew anything about her life. The restaurant was called Beaumont House, one of Chicago's most exclusive dining destinations. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. Chandeliers cast golden reflections across polished marble floors. The scent of butter, garlic, and fresh herbs drifted through the air. Couples celebrated anniversaries. Executives closed business deals. Influencers snapped photos of desserts worth $40 a plate. Everyone seemed to belong. Everyone except the woman sitting alone at table 12. Emily's navy blue dress was simple, elegant, but modest. She had purchased it from a clearance rack 6 months earlier and carefully kept it hidden in her closet for a special occasion. Tonight was supposed to be that occasion. Her 32nd birthday. No balloons. No party. No friends gathering around a cake. Just one quiet dinner. One evening to remind herself that she still mattered. That somewhere beneath the bills, responsibilities, school pickups, laundry, overtime shifts, and sleepless nights, she was still a person. Not just a mother. Not just a provider. Not just someone surviving. A person. For nearly 9 years, Emily had dedicated every ounce of energy to raising her son, Noah. Every decision revolved around him. Every paycheck seemed to disappear before it arrived. She worked mornings at a medical billing office and evenings managing online customer support from her apartment. Most nights, she fell asleep with a laptop open beside her bed. Most mornings began before sunrise. Yet somehow she always found a way forward. Tonight, Noah was spending the evening with her older sister. For the first time in years, Emily had chosen herself. Just once. Just for a few hours. The hostess shifted awkwardly beside the table. Perhaps another seating area would be more comfortable. Comfortable. The word hung in the air. Emily understood exactly what it meant. Before she could respond, laughter erupted from a nearby table. Not directed at her. Not openly. But the timing made her cheeks warm all the same. She looked down at her folded hands. The piano continued playing. The city lights sparkled beyond the glass. Somewhere in the restaurant, silverware clinked against fine china. Life continued normally for everyone else. Yet for Emily Carter, sitting alone beneath the golden lights of Beaumont House, this birthday dinner was beginning to feel like the loneliest night of her life. Emily forced a small smile, the kind people wear when they are trying to protect what little dignity remains. She looked at the hostess and nodded politely, even though her chest felt tight. "I am fine here," she said softly. The young woman hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. For a second, it seemed as though she wanted to say something else. Then she simply nodded and stepped away. But the damage had already been done. Emily could feel it. The awareness. The attention. The silent judgment that lingered longer than words. She reached for her water glass and took a slow sip. Her hand remained steady. Years of struggle had taught her that much. The world could take many things from a person, but losing composure only made difficult moments harder. Around her, the restaurant gradually returned to its rhythm. Conversations restarted. Laughter drifted between tables. A waiter carried a silver tray topped with glasses of sparkling water. Somewhere near the bar, someone celebrated a promotion with a loud cheer. Yet Emily felt separated from all of it, as though she were watching life through glass. She glanced toward the window beside her table. Chicago stretched endlessly beyond the skyline. Thousands of lights sparkled against the night sky. From 30 floors above the city, the streets below looked peaceful. Tiny streams of headlights moved through the darkness like ribbons of gold. Emily remembered how Noah always loved city lights. Whenever they drove downtown, he would press his face against the car window and point excitedly at every tall building. He would invent stories about the people inside. Secret superheroes. Scientists changing the world. Explorers planning adventures. Noah believed every window contained something extraordinary. Emily smiled at the thought. Her son had a gift for finding wonder where others saw ordinary things. The smile faded as quickly as it appeared. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. A text message waited on the screen. It was from her sister, Rachel. Noah is asleep. He made me promise to send you a happy birthday message. He says do not work tonight. Emily laughed quietly under her breath. That sounded exactly like him. Another message followed beneath it. A picture. Noah lay asleep on a couch, one arm wrapped around a stuffed dinosaur he had owned since kindergarten. His dark hair covered part of his forehead. His mouth hung slightly open. Completely peaceful. Emily stared at the photo longer than she intended. Suddenly the noise of the restaurant seemed very far away. 9 years. 9 years of lunches packed before dawn. 9 years of school projects spread across kitchen tables. 9 years of choosing necessities over dreams. She would do it all again without hesitation. But tonight had been different. Tonight was supposed to remind her that she existed outside of responsibility, that she was allowed one evening to celebrate surviving everything life had thrown at her. A shadow moved across her table. Emily looked up. A middle-aged woman wearing expensive jewelry stood nearby. She was dressed elegantly, the type of person who appeared completely at home in a place like Beaumont House. Her eyes lingered on Emily for a moment before she leaned toward a companion and whispered something. The companion glanced over. Then another. A brief exchange of smiles followed. Nothing openly cruel. Nothing obvious. Yet Emily knew the feeling immediately. She had seen it before. The look people gave when they quietly decided who belonged and who did not. She lowered her gaze and returned her attention to the menu. The words blurred together. Steak. Sea bass. Lobster risotto. Suddenly none of it mattered. She considered paying for a dessert and leaving early. Maybe this had been a mistake. Maybe some dreams were easier when they stayed dreams. Then she stopped herself. No, she had earned this evening. Every minute of it. She straightened her shoulders, ordered a simple entree from the passing waiter, and made a silent promise not to leave because strangers made her uncomfortable. Across the restaurant, hidden behind reflections from the floor-to-ceiling windows, another pair of eyes had been watching everything. Not just the conversation with the hostess. Not just the uncomfortable glances. Everything. From the moment Emily sat down alone at table 12, he had noticed the reservation card, the birthday candle tucked discreetly beside the menu, the way she smiled at her phone when she looked at a photograph. Most people saw a woman dining alone. He saw something entirely different. And as the city lights shimmered behind the glass, the man quietly set down his wine glass and continued watching. The waiter returned carrying a small basket of warm bread and carefully placed it beside Emily's plate. She thanked him with a genuine smile. Kindness cost nothing, and despite everything that had happened, she refused to let bitterness follow her home. The waiter nodded politely before moving on to another table. For a few minutes, peace returned. The piano drifted softly through the dining room. Candlelight flickered against crystal glasses. Outside the windows, the city glowed beneath the spring night sky. Emily took a slow breath and reminded herself why she came. Not for approval, not for attention, just for one quiet evening. Then she heard a voice. Excuse me, is this seat taken? Emily looked up. A woman stood beside a nearby table, elegant and confident, draped in designer labels that practically announced their price tags. Her name was Vanessa Whitmore, though Emily did not know it yet. Vanessa was speaking to another guest, not to her. The seat beside the woman remained empty. A second later, Vanessa laughed lightly and said, "Of course it is. People do not usually come here alone unless they are waiting for someone." Several guests around her smiled. One man chuckled. Another lifted his wine glass. The comment seemed harmless on the surface, yet the timing was impossible to ignore. Vanessa's eyes briefly flicked toward table 12 before returning to her companions. Emily felt the familiar sting of embarrassment. It was subtle, careful, impossible to confront directly. Exactly the kind of cruelty that left no fingerprints. She lowered her eyes and focused on her plate as her entree arrived. The aroma of garlic butter rose from the dish. Normally, she would have enjoyed it. Tonight it tasted different. Every bite felt smaller somehow. Across the room, Vanessa continued entertaining her table. She spoke loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Stories about private vacations, luxury resorts, charity galas, exclusive clubs. The conversation floated through the restaurant like a performance designed for an audience. Then came another glance toward Emily. Another smile. Another carefully placed remark. "I always say confidence is important," Vanessa announced. Even when someone clearly ends up somewhere beyond their comfort zone. More laughter followed. Not everyone joined in. Some guests looked uncomfortable. Others pretended not to notice. That was the strange thing about public humiliation. Most people recognized it. Very few interrupted it. Emily kept her gaze lowered. She could feel warmth creeping into her cheeks. A younger version of herself might have left by now. She might have grabbed her purse and rushed toward the elevator before tears could arrive. But life had changed her. Raising Noah had changed her. Every challenge she had survived had quietly built something stronger inside her. So she stayed. She cut another piece of food, took another sip of water, refused to surrender her seat. Several tables away, the man near the window watched everything unfold. Nathan Reynolds rarely paid attention to strangers. Running one of the largest technology firms in the country left little room for observation. His days were measured in acquisitions, board meetings, investor calls, and decisions that moved millions of dollars. Yet tonight his attention kept returning to table 12. He noticed how Emily never responded with anger. He noticed how she continued thanking every employee who approached her. He noticed the birthday card tucked partially beneath her purse. Most importantly, he noticed how alone she looked despite being surrounded by hundreds of people. Nathan glanced toward Vanessa's table. He recognized her immediately. Chicago society circles were small. Wealth tended to orbit itself. Vanessa had built a reputation around being seen in important places beside important people. She collected status the way others collected souvenirs. Nathan found himself strangely irritated. Not because of the comments themselves. Because of the target. Emily had done absolutely nothing to deserve them. Meanwhile, Emily reached for her phone again. A new message had arrived from Noah. It was a voice recording. Her sister must have helped him send it before bedtime. Emily pressed play and held the phone close. "Happy birthday, Mom. I love you the most. Save me some cake." His sleepy little voice instantly softened something inside her. A genuine smile appeared. This time it stayed. For the first time all evening, she forgot about the whispers. Forgot about the glances. Forgot about Vanessa Whitmore entirely. And from across the restaurant, Nathan Reynolds saw that smile. Something about it stopped him cold. Because suddenly he was no longer looking at a stranger. He was looking at someone who reminded him of a moment he had spent 10 years trying to repay. Nathan Reynolds had spent years learning how to read people. In business, it was a survival skill. Investors hid fear behind confidence. Competitors disguised desperation as ambition. Executives smiled while calculating advantages 3 steps ahead. Most of the time, Nathan could predict a person within minutes. Yet the woman at table 12 did not fit any category he knew. She was not trying to impress anyone. She was not seeking attention. She was not looking around the room hoping to be noticed by wealth or status. In fact, she seemed determined to do the opposite. That was what caught his attention. Nathan leaned back slightly in his chair and watched the reflection of the dining room in the glass beside him. It allowed him to observe without appearing obvious. Around him sat 2 senior executives from his company. They were discussing quarterly projections and expansion plans. Normally Nathan would have been leading the conversation. Tonight he barely heard a word. His thoughts kept drifting elsewhere. "Nathan," one of the executives asked. "Did you hear what I said?" Nathan blinked. "Sorry. Repeat that." The executive laughed. You never miss details. What has your attention tonight? Nathan glanced toward table 12 for half a second before returning his focus. Nothing important, he answered. But that was not entirely true, because something deep in his memory had begun stirring. It started with that smile, the one Emily gave while listening to her son's voice message. There had been no bitterness in it, no self-pity, no resentment, just warmth, genuine warmth. Nathan had seen countless people become hardened by disappointment. Yet somehow this woman seemed determined to remain kind despite it. Across the room, Vanessa Whitmore continued commanding attention. Her table had grown louder. More guests had joined the conversation. Champagne glasses sparkled beneath the lights. Laughter rose and fell like waves. Vanessa appeared completely at ease. She always did. Her confidence came from knowing people wanted access to her social circle. But every few minutes her attention drifted back toward Emily. It was subtle enough to escape notice from most people. Not from Nathan. He noticed every glance, every carefully aimed comment, every smile that carried a hidden edge. One of the waiters approached Vanessa's table carrying a dessert menu. Before he could speak, Vanessa interrupted him. Actually, could you bring a birthday dessert to the lady dining alone? She said loudly enough for several nearby tables to hear. It looks like she could use some cheering up. A few guests exchanged awkward looks. The waiter froze. The suggestion sounded kind. That was what made it effective. On the surface, it appeared generous. Yet the room immediately understood the implication. Emily heard it too. Nathan watched her shoulders stiffen slightly. Just slightly. Enough to reveal the discomfort she worked so hard to hide. The waiter glanced toward Emily uncertainly. Only if she requests it, he replied professionally. Vanessa smiled. Of course. Then she lifted her glass and resumed her conversation as though nothing had happened. Nathan felt irritation tighten in his chest. It was not the dessert comment itself. It was the pattern. The relentless effort to make another person feel small while maintaining plausible innocence. Meanwhile, Emily looked out at the city again. She wished Noah could see the view. He would have loved it. For a moment she imagined him standing beside the window counting skyscrapers and inventing stories about each one. The thought made her smile despite herself. She refused to let strangers define the evening. Yet the loneliness remained. Birthdays had a way of amplifying certain feelings, especially when celebrated alone. Nathan noticed that too. He noticed the untouched portion of her meal, the way she occasionally glanced at families seated together, the way she checked her phone, not because she was distracted, but because it was her connection to the people she loved. Then something unexpected happened. A server passed by Emily's table carrying a small tray of candles intended for another celebration. As he walked past, the tiny flames reflected briefly in the glass near her seat. For a second, the warm light illuminated her face. Nathan stared. A memory hit him so suddenly that it felt like the room had fallen silent. 10 years disappeared in an instant. A rainy evening. A crowded train station. A moment of kindness from a stranger when he had nothing. Nathan lowered his eyes. His heartbeat slowed, then quickened again. It could not be. The possibility seemed almost impossible. Yet the more he looked at Emily Carter, the more certain he became that fate was preparing to settle a debt neither of them had remembered for a very long time. Nathan sat motionless for several seconds after the memory surfaced. Around him, the restaurant remained alive with conversation, music, and the soft rhythm of an expensive evening unfolding exactly as planned. Yet none of it seemed to reach him anymore. His attention remained fixed on table 12. 10 years earlier, he had not been the man people knew today. There had been no magazine covers, no interviews, no private jet waiting at an airport, no company worth billions of dollars. Back then, Nathan Reynolds was simply a young entrepreneur carrying more ambition than certainty. He remembered exhausting days and sleepless nights. He remembered wondering whether his dream would survive another month. Most of all, he remembered one particular evening when everything had felt impossible. The memory was blurry around the edges, but certain details remained crystal clear. Rain, a crowded station, a nearly empty wallet, and a stranger who had treated him with kindness when she had every reason not to. Nathan slowly lifted his glass, but never took a sip. Could it really be her? The years had changed both of them. Life had left its marks. Yet the smile was the same. The quiet warmth was the same. The way she seemed more concerned with others than herself was exactly the same. Across the room, Emily finished her meal and folded her napkin neatly beside the plate. The evening had not gone as she imagined, but she was trying her best to salvage what remained of it. She checked the time on her phone. Nearly 9 o'clock. Rachel would probably still be awake if she called. Noah would already be asleep. A small part of her considered leaving before dessert arrived. Another part refused to let discomfort chase her away. She had spent too many years surrendering things she wanted because life demanded sacrifices. Tonight she wanted to stay, even if staying felt difficult. A server approached her table carrying the dessert menu. Emily thanked him and accepted it politely. Before she could open it, another voice interrupted. "Still here?" Vanessa Whitmore asked from several feet away. Her smile appeared friendly. Her tone suggested otherwise. Emily looked up. "Yes." Vanessa nodded slowly. "Good for you." Most people would probably feel uncomfortable after all the attention. A few guests nearby immediately stopped talking. Not because the comment was loud, because everyone understood exactly what it meant. Emily felt the heat rise in her cheeks again. She opened the dessert menu and pretended to read. Vanessa lingered another moment. "I suppose confidence is admirable." Then she walked away. The words floated behind her like perfume. Pleasant on the surface, sharp underneath. Emily released a slow breath. She refused to respond. Some battles were not worth fighting. Some people only wanted a reaction. Across the room, Nathan finally set down his glass. Something inside him had reached a decision. One of his executives noticed immediately. "You are leaving?" the man asked. Nathan adjusted his jacket. "For a minute. We still need to discuss the acquisition." Nathan glanced toward table 12. "It can wait." The executive followed his gaze and raised an eyebrow. Nathan offered no explanation. He simply stood. Nearby, conversations continued. Waiters moved between tables. No one paid much attention at first. Nathan Reynolds was known throughout Chicago. People recognized him everywhere. Yet he rarely created scenes. He preferred privacy whenever possible. Tonight was different. Slowly, he stepped away from his table. The polished floor reflected the warm chandelier light beneath his shoes. One step, then another. Several guests noticed. Then more. A few whispers began spreading through the room. Nathan was not heading toward the exit. He was not walking toward the bar. He was moving directly through the center of the restaurant, straight toward table 12. Emily remained unaware. She was staring down at the dessert menu, debating whether she could justify ordering a slice of cheesecake on a birthday she was no longer certain she wanted to celebrate. The piano continued playing softly in the background. Glasses clinked. Silverware touched fine china. Then the sounds began fading one by one as more people noticed where Nathan Reynolds was going. Even Vanessa Whitmore stopped speaking mid-sentence. Her eyes followed him. The entire room seemed to inhale at the same time. And for the first time all evening, every pair of eyes that had quietly judged Emily Carter were about to witness something none of them expected. Nathan stopped beside table 12. For a moment, he said nothing. The restaurant seemed suspended between breaths. The piano player continued softly in the background, unaware that half the room had stopped listening to the music and started watching something else entirely. Emily sensed someone standing nearby and looked up from the dessert menu. Her eyes widened slightly. She recognized him immediately. Almost everyone in Chicago recognized Nathan Reynolds. His face appeared on business magazines, news segments, and billboards throughout the city. Seeing him in person was different. He looked less like a celebrity and more like a man carrying the weight of 1,000 responsibilities. "Excuse me," Nathan said calmly. His voice was neither loud nor dramatic. Yet somehow every nearby table heard it. "Is this seat taken?" Emily blinked. For a second she wondered if he was speaking to someone behind her. Then she realized he was looking directly at her. "No," she answered quietly. Nathan nodded. "Would you mind if I joined you?" Several wine glasses paused halfway to their owner's lips. Conversations faded into silence. Emily glanced around uncertainly. Nothing about the situation made sense. "You can sit if you would like," she replied. Nathan smiled gently. Then he pulled out the empty chair beside her and sat down. The sound of the chair sliding against the floor seemed louder than it should have. Across the room, Vanessa Whitmore looked completely frozen. Her smile disappeared. Several guests exchanged stunned glances. Others immediately reached for their phones, pretending to check messages while secretly trying to understand what they were witnessing. Nathan ignored all of them. His attention remained entirely on Emily. "Happy birthday," he said. Emily looked surprised. How did you know? Nathan glanced toward the birthday card partially visible beside her purse. Lucky guess. For the first time that evening, Emily laughed. It was a small laugh. Soft. Genuine. Nathan noticed how quickly it transformed her face. Thank you, she said. I appreciate that. A waiter approached nervously. Mr. Reynolds, would you like your table prepared elsewhere? Nathan shook his head. No. I am exactly where I want to be. The waiter nodded and quickly retreated. The sentence traveled through the restaurant within seconds. Exactly where I want to be. People repeated it quietly to one another. Some looked confused. Others looked embarrassed. Vanessa looked irritated. Emily shifted slightly in her chair. I feel like everyone is staring. Nathan glanced around the room. That is because they are. She smiled despite herself. This is very unusual. I imagine it is. Why are you sitting here? Nathan studied her face for a moment. Because I noticed something tonight. Emily tilted her head slightly. What is that? Nathan looked toward the city lights beyond the glass. I noticed that everyone seemed very interested in deciding where you belong. The words settled over the table. Emily lowered her eyes. She knew exactly what he meant. Nathan continued. Personally, I think they got it wrong. Silence followed. Not uncomfortable silence. The kind that carries meaning. Nearby guests listened without pretending otherwise anymore. Vanessa crossed her arms from across the room. Nathan did not acknowledge her presence. Emily stared at the candlelit reflection dancing across her water glass. For the first time all evening, someone had seen what was happening instead of pretending it was not. That realization affected her more than she expected. You do not know anything about me, she said softly. Nathan smiled. That is true. Then why defend me? Nathan leaned back slightly. Because respect should not require a biography. The answer hit the room harder than any speech could have. Several guests looked away immediately. Others lowered their eyes toward their plates. Emily felt something tighten in her chest. Not sadness. Relief. The kind of relief that arrives when someone finally says the thing nobody else was willing to say. Nathan glanced toward the untouched dessert menu. Have you decided? Emily laughed. I was thinking about cheesecake. Excellent choice. You sound very confident about that. I have spent years making difficult decisions. I trust my judgment. Another laugh escaped her. This one came easier. Across the restaurant, the atmosphere had completely changed. The woman who had spent the evening sitting alone was no longer isolated. The billionaire everyone admired had chosen her table, her conversation, and her company. Yet Nathan knew something nobody else in the room knew. This was not charity. It was not a publicity stunt. It was not random. Because the closer he looked at Emily Carter, the more certain he became that fate had just reunited him with the person he had spent 10 years hoping he would one day meet again. The cheesecake arrived a few minutes later, decorated with a single candle whose flame danced gently beneath the golden lights of Beaumont House. Emily stared at it and smiled. It was a simple thing, barely noticeable compared to the luxury surrounding her, yet somehow it felt more meaningful now than it had earlier. Nathan noticed the expression on her face. Make a wish, he said. Emily laughed softly. I think I am too old for that. That is exactly what people say right before making one anyway. She shook her head and blew out the candle. A few nearby tables offered polite applause. The atmosphere felt different now. Warmer. Lighter. Even the staff seemed more relaxed. For the first time all evening, Emily felt as though she belonged exactly where she was. Nathan watched her for a moment before speaking again. Can I ask you something? Sure. 10 years ago, did you ever spend much time around Union Station? Emily looked surprised by the question. Union Station? Nathan nodded. In Chicago. Emily thought for a moment. I used to pass through there all the time. Nathan leaned forward slightly. Did you ever help a stranger there? Emily laughed. You are going to have to be more specific. A young man. About 29. Terrible suit. Cheap briefcase. Looked like he had not slept in a week. Emily smiled. That description probably fit half the station. Nathan laughed too. Fair point. Then his expression grew more thoughtful. He missed a train. Lost an important opportunity. Everything in his life seemed to be falling apart at once. Something flickered behind Emily's eyes. Not recognition. Not yet. Just curiosity. Nathan continued. He was sitting alone at a food counter trying to figure out how to make $20 last until the end of the week. Emily slowly lowered her fork. The restaurant around them seemed to fade into the background. Go on. she said quietly. Nathan glanced toward the city skyline. Most people walked past him without noticing. One person stopped. Emily listened carefully now. A woman carrying 2 coffees. She sat down beside him even though every other seat was available. The memory was becoming clearer. Nathan could see it in her face. She told him something he never forgot. Emily frowned slightly. What was it? Nathan smiled. She said, "Bad days do not get the final vote. Keep going." The words landed softly between them. Emily stared at him. Her eyes widened little by little. Somewhere deep inside her memory, a forgotten moment suddenly came back to life. A rainy afternoon. A stranger sitting alone. A conversation lasting maybe 5 minutes. Nothing extraordinary. Nothing she had ever considered important. "That was you," she whispered. Nathan nodded. "That was me." Emily looked genuinely stunned. "I barely remember that." Nathan laughed. "I know. We talked for maybe a few minutes." 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Emily blinked. "You timed it." "No. I just remembered." The answer made her speechless. Nathan folded his hands on the table. "You bought me coffee that day." Emily shook her head. "Coffee costs $3. Back then, $3 felt like a fortune." She looked down at the table. "I did not do anything special." Nathan smiled sadly. "That is the interesting thing about kindness. The person giving it rarely understands its value." Nearby guests had stopped pretending not to listen. Even Vanessa Whitmore remained silent now. Nathan continued. "You sat with a complete stranger because you thought he looked discouraged." Emily remembered more details now. The tired eyes. The wrinkled suit. The defeated expression. "I told you things would get better." "You did. I was just trying to help." Nathan nodded. "You did help." His voice grew quieter. "The meeting I thought I had ruined eventually became my first major investor relationship. That company became Reynolds Dynamics." Emily stared at him, the realization slowly settling over her. Nathan smiled warmly. "You forgot me by the next day." He paused. "I never forgot you." Emily sat completely still. The sounds of the restaurant seemed distant now, as though the entire room had drifted several feet away. She looked at Nathan and searched his face for any sign that he was exaggerating, any indication that this was some misunderstanding. Instead, she found sincerity, the kind that could not be rehearsed. "I do not know what to say," she admitted quietly. Nathan smiled. "You do not have to say anything." Emily shook her head in disbelief. "I bought you a coffee." "You gave me hope," Nathan corrected gently. "There is a difference." Emily looked down at her hands. For years, she had measured her life through responsibilities. Paychecks, rent, payments, school schedules, grocery lists. She had never considered that a random conversation at a train station might have mattered to anyone. Yet here sat one of the most successful businessmen in the country telling her that a forgotten act of kindness had stayed with him for a decade. Nathan glanced around the room before looking back at her. "Do you know what I remember most?" Emily slowly shook her head. "You never asked who I was." She frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "Most people asked what company I was building, what investors I had, what connections I knew. You did not ask any of that." Emily thought back. The memory was becoming clearer with every second. "You looked exhausted," she said. Nathan laughed softly. "I was. You looked like you needed someone to listen." Nathan nodded. "Exactly." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights shimmered beyond the windows like thousands of tiny stars scattered across the skyline. Nearby tables remained unusually quiet. Even people who could not hear every word understood they were witnessing something meaningful. Across the room, Vanessa Whitmore sat silently. For the first time all evening, she seemed unsure of herself. The attention she normally controlled had shifted completely away from her. Nathan leaned back slightly in his chair. "After that day, whenever things became difficult, I remembered something else you said." Emily laughed. "Apparently, I talked more than I remember. You said success is not measured by how many people know your name. It is measured by how many people are glad you walked into their life." Emily stared at him. Then she covered her mouth with one hand. "I actually said that. Word for word. That sounds wiser than I usually am." Nathan smiled. It sounded wise then too. A waiter quietly refilled their water glasses. Neither noticed at first. The atmosphere around table 12 had become something entirely different from the uncomfortable isolation of earlier in the evening. It felt warmer, human, real. Emily looked around the dining room and saw expressions she had not seen before. Several guests offered small smiles. Others nodded respectfully when their eyes met hers. The judgment that had surrounded her hours earlier seemed to have disappeared. Not because she had changed. Not because she had proven herself. Because the truth had finally become visible. Nathan noticed her looking around. "Funny, is it not?" he asked. "What? You are exactly the same person you were 3 hours ago." Emily smiled. "I suppose so. Yet somehow people see you differently now." She understood immediately. The observation carried more weight than either of them needed to explain. Nathan glanced toward the birthday card beside her purse. "For what it is worth, I think they were wrong about you from the beginning." Emily felt her eyes growing moist. Not from sadness. From something far rarer. Recognition. Respect. The feeling of being seen clearly after spending years blending into the background. Nathan continued softly. "The woman who helped a stranger when she had nothing to gain from it is still sitting right here." Emily looked down for a moment before meeting his gaze again. "Life has been difficult since then." Nathan nodded. "I know. Some days I am not sure I am doing enough." Nathan smiled warmly. "You raised a son who sends birthday messages reminding his mother to save him cake." Emily laughed through her emotions. "That is true. That tells me everything I need to know." And as those words settled over the table, a silence followed that felt less like emptiness and more like healing. The kind that arrives when someone reminds you of your worth at the exact moment you had almost forgotten it yourself. The evening was beginning to wind down. The piano had shifted to softer melodies. Some guests were leaving. Others lingered over coffee and conversation. Yet table 12 remained the center of a story nobody would forget. Emily glanced at the clock near the bar and realized how late it had become. "I should probably head home soon," she said. "Noah will be asking about the cake tomorrow morning." Nathan smiled. "Then you definitely need to bring some with you." Emily laughed. The sound came easily now. Gone was the uncertainty that had followed her into Beaumont House. Gone was the feeling of being out of place. She felt lighter somehow. Not because her life had suddenly become easier. Not because her challenges had disappeared. But because someone had reminded her that her life had mattered more than she realized. Nathan stood as she gathered her purse. Immediately, several people nearby rose from their seats as well, not out of obligation, but out of respect. Emily noticed and looked surprised. Nathan noticed too. "Funny," he said quietly. "What?" she asked. He glanced around the room. "Nobody is looking at you the way they were earlier." Emily followed his gaze. He was right. The whispers were gone. The judgment had vanished. The same people who had barely acknowledged her presence now offered warm smiles and polite nods. One elderly couple even wished her a happy birthday as they walked past. Emily shook her head. "People are strange." Nathan smiled. "Sometimes, but not always." As they walked toward the front of the restaurant, the manager himself appeared and thanked Emily for visiting. His tone carried genuine respect. Several staff members smiled as she passed. Even the hostess who had spoken to her earlier looked relieved and offered a sincere apology with her eyes alone. Emily responded with a kind nod. She held no anger toward any of them. Life was too short for that. Near the entrance, Nathan stopped. The city lights stretched beyond the glass doors, painting Chicago in gold and silver. Cars moved through the streets below like streams of light flowing through the night. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emily turned toward him. "Thank you." Nathan shook his head immediately. "You already thanked me 10 years ago." Emily laughed softly. "That is not how this works." "Maybe it is." She looked at him carefully. "You know, I still cannot believe you remembered all of that." Nathan smiled. "Some moments change your direction. You do not forget those." Emily felt emotion rising again. "I was just trying to be kind." Nathan nodded. "Exactly." He extended his hand. She shook it. Then, without fanfare or grand gestures, they simply stood there as two people connected by a moment neither had fully understood when it happened. No promises were made. No gifts were exchanged. Nothing dramatic followed. And somehow that made the evening even more meaningful. Because the greatest thing Nathan Reynolds had given her was not money, influence, or opportunity. It was recognition, respect, a reminder of her own value. As Emily stepped toward the elevator, Nathan watched her go. The doors opened. She turned once more and smiled. Then she disappeared from sight. The restaurant gradually returned to normal. Conversations resumed. Glasses clinked. The city continued moving beneath the night sky. But the people who witnessed what happened that evening carried something home with them. a lesson hidden inside a simple act of kindness. The richest person in Beaumont House had not been the billionaire seated beneath the chandeliers. It had been the woman who spent her life giving encouragement when she had little for herself. Because wealth can fill a room. Status can command attention. Success can build an empire. But kindness has a different kind of power. It travels through years. It survives forgotten moments. It returns when least expected. And sometimes, on an ordinary birthday in a crowded restaurant overlooking Chicago, it comes back carrying a reminder that the smallest good deed can become someone else's reason to keep going.